At homicide, the midnight tour comes on.
Do we have anybody inside the carryout that actually saw what happened?
No. Those people were gone.
Incoming detectives are briefed on the Chinese Dragon murder, but they must immediately turn to new business, another murder.
Anybody got a Donald Bolton? Well, they said Donald Bolton died in the operating room from a stab wound from the back. Anybody get a stab wound on Donald Bolton last night?
Donald Bolton, Downing Street. He's got an ID number.
Do you have that information on the brother, family members? We don't know anything about, we have no information about this murder at all. Nothing.
Detectives Joe Schwartz and J.T. McCann know that the hours right after a murder are critical.
Well, if he's in the operating room, he must have been stabbed tonight.
No. Especially now when their caseloads are so heavy.
That's why it's so important to keep working on a case until you do close it, if you can. Within the first 24 hours is generally when you do close a case, because other cases come in and you never catch up.
1:40 a.m. While at the scene of a new murder,
They chase them over here. The guy walks up, blows him into the, shoots him in the head, and they get into a Monte Carlo and drive off.
they get a break in the one they left back at the office.
We found a witness to it when we were up there, okay? A guy named...
Muffin was actually involved in the fight, but he's not involved in the actual stabbing.
They head back to homicide to talk to witnesses.
Everybody's going to have to wake up. Midnight ain't here no more. People are coming in and working.
You know it's been a bad night when you come in the door and you see witnesses just all lined out in the hallway or in the little vestibule there,
7 a.m.
Willie, you ready? Let's go.
They've pieced together the story. Drug sellers who repeatedly stabbed a customer to take his money.
We want somebody to watch the girlfriend's apartment in the back. There's about 2 apartments we're going to hit. This murder which happened there last night, we're going to probably hit, if he's not there, we're going to check apartment 104, at least 1 more unit. Ready?
They have names on 2 suspects. One, a 14-year-old boy who lives near the murder scene.
Just 1 or 2. The rest of y'all can stay outside.
Do you know where Boo's at right now?
No.
Boo's the one to stab him?
Yeah, I was standing right there the whole time. I was trying to tell him not to stab him. For what? It ain't no sense to do it. I was pulling him away.
All right, where's the transport car?
Right inside here. Behind us.
All right, you want to just take him right down the house?
This whole murder's over a $20 crack. Okay? That's all it's about, a $20 rock. If you saw it, fine. But if you didn't see it, I want you to be lying to cover up for your boyfriend.
I ain't coming up for my boyfriend. I ain't see him in it.
Well, what happened then? Tell me. What happened?
When I was standing in the hallway, it was,
Show me where it happened at. Come on, you show me where it happened at then.
The second suspect, known as Boo, also lives in the neighborhood.
He probably hit the man, but I did not see Boo with no knife.
All the blood, is that where it all came from?
It was, yeah, the blood. It was right here, and they was standing him outside, too. Right here in the hall. Right here. Out here.
Let's get everybody to take her on down, too, okay, for a statement. Apparently they sold him some bad drugs, and he wanted to get his money back.
It looked like it's been wiped already.
It's been cleaned off.
It's clean. Clean.
Oh, we sure it's a weapon?
She said it is. She said this is the weapon that he gave her.
That's good enough.
The juvenile we arrested for this says that the other person we're looking for, Boo, who he says did the stabbing, is at this crack house. And we're going to go see if Boo, Leonard, is there. Our backup. In most neighborhoods, most of the crack houses are known to everybody.
This isn't what you used to we get.
And this is a known crack house where people come in to purchase crack, use crack to get high. Clearly, it's all narcotic paraphernalia. This is the last place he was at, we're told. So right now we just have to wait to get some more information where the guy Leonard might be at. So. Hey, Willie, make sure you get the back of 104, okay? Come on, let's go up.
Another tip. The suspect is at a relative's home.
Could you open the door for a minute, please? I want you to knock on the door. I want you to say, Boo, please, please, give yourself up to the police. Please. You're helping him out.
I'm not doing it.
You're helping him out. She says he's in that apartment right now, okay? He told her he didn't do it. He was there, but he didn't stab the man. Here, come here. I'll knock on the door. Are you staying there with me? I'll knock.
No, why I gotta stay in there?
Would you call out to him?
Ain't nobody in there.
There is. Would you please call out to your brother?
I'm not going out. No, you're not in there.
With no search warrant, the police are stymied.
If we went in there illegally, we could jeopardize the case, which we don't want to do. Probably in there. Can't do anything about it. Seriously, just be truthful. That's all. That's why we wanted to talk to you before.
I ain't never murdered nobody, man.
I want him to stay right here for a minute. After we left, Joe and I went back and stood in the hallway for a few minutes, and I heard movement on the inside, so I decided to stay. Next thing I know, the door is being unlocked. They opened the door, and there's my man standing inside the door. I should say sitting inside the door.
It's a new generation. Most of these people are using crack, using drugs, and it just causes them to do weird things, strange things. You know, they'll kill you for a $10 rock, crack rock. They'll kill you for anything at all. Nothing twice about it.
The Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791. For more than 100 years, Americans had the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, but that right existed little more than on paper. In other words, the average American probably couldn't tell you what it meant or even recognize an unreasonable search and seizure, even if it was right in front of them. One of the first cases to begin to define an unreasonable search and seizure was Weeks versus U.S. Weeks versus U.S., which was decided in 1914, first defined the exclusionary rule. You may have heard of this before. The exclusionary rule is defined by case law and states evidence and persons obtained unlawfully by the police will be excluded at trial, or in other words, can't be used by the prosecution as evidence to convict. The case started in Kansas City when a man named Weeks was arrested for using the mail to transport tickets for a lottery, which was against the law. Officers arrived at his house and searched it without a warrant. Now, to us today, that's obviously a huge problem. But at the time, once again, the average American and probably even the police didn't know what an unreasonable search and seizure was. We often rely on case law to interpret and define our constitutional and statutory rights. There just wasn't any meaningful case law to that point yet to give the protection from unreasonable search and seizure any substance. The police themselves possibly didn't realize they were doing anything wrong, or they believed the lack of a warrant to be a minor technicality. During the warrantless search of Weeks's residence, the police seized articles and papers. They left, and later they even returned and searched the house a second time without a warrant, this time seizing more letters. Weeks was eventually convicted of unlawful use of the mail based upon this evidence collected without a warrant. The Supreme Court of the United States reversed his conviction and held evidence that was obtained unlawfully, in this case without a warrant, could not be used. This exclusionary rule, as it came to be known, only applied to federal law enforcement, however, and the exclusionary rule would not be applied to local, county, and state law enforcement for more than 40 years until the 1961 case of Mapp versus Ohio.
One concern of the framer is about discretionary enforcement by officers. You can't just tell officers in the field, go out and use your best judgment. Go out and look around for publishers' papers that prove that this person's been slandering the king, or look for these untaxed, imported, smuggled goods. Go out and do your best. That doesn't cut it. Telling a government agent, just go out and do your best. You've got to actually articulate what their job is and how they're to carry it out. They've got to operate under articulated standards. So they've got to operate according to law, not just according to use your best judgment. We've got here on the board the text of the U.S. Constitution, the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And notice that it's split into half. There's the first half, highlighted here in red. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And then there's the last half, highlighted in green, that says, no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So an interesting historical question here is, what's the relationship between the first half and the last half, between the red stuff and the green stuff? Some people say, well, the green stuff tells you exactly what it means to be a reasonable search or seizure. A reasonable search or seizure has to be supported by a warrant. The warrant has to particularly describe where you're going to search and when you're going to search it. And it's got to be supported by probable cause. The government's got to give you some reason to believe that they will find things there. They got to be able to articulate it to a judge beforehand. So that's one school of thought. That is, the green text, the last half of the text, tells us what the first half means. You interpret reasonableness in light of the warrant and probable cause clauses. The second school of thought is that these are two separate thoughts, that they are relevant to unreasonable searches and seizures, but that warrants and probable cause are not the principal or the only way of establishing that a search or seizure could be reasonable. So that the red half, the first half of the clause, is just a freestanding requirement of reasonableness, and then an afterthought, oh, by the way, once you get these warrant things, they've got to be limited because governments have abused warrants in the past. They've used them as a way to try to defend themselves from juries who were awarding £3,000 against government agents who were searching printers' offices. And so we don't want government agents trying to use warrants as this kind of overbroad defense against the righteous indignation of a jury who tells the government they have to stay within bounds. So two schools of thought. One of them is reasonableness is standing on its own, and warrants are discussed here as a way of limiting warrants. The other school of thought is that warranted searches are really the quintessential reasonable search. We're going to watch how these different thoughts play out over time in the law of search and seizure, and how these arguments play in today whenever we have a new government innovation for how to collect information. You can guarantee this: if somebody says, "Why, this is a general warrant," it's not a compliment. It's meant as an insult. It's meant as a way of saying, no, this is uncontrolled, unexplained government intrusion into private lives, and we've got to stop it here. So they're trying to be James Otis or John Adams all over again when they're claiming that today's effort is a general warrant.
We're gonna make sure they do what they supposed to do. You hear me, world? I want y'all to view this shit.
Hey Trayvon, go ahead and step out of the car for me.
What's the cause of that?
I'll explain in just a minute. Let me. Oh, touch down. No, you're not totally.
Huh? What's going on? Huh?
It's alright. You're recording.
I know. Well, I'm not consenting to nobody searching my car, even though it ain't nothing in here.
Well, so here's the thing, my man. You both have gang affiliations.
I don't have no gang affiliation.
You have a lot of alerts. So
Alerts about what?
we have the right to do a protected sweep.
No, you.
Yeah, we do.
Not for no search and seize, not for
We're not
nothing.
seizing anything.
Okay, that's cool. But at the same time,
Step out for me.
at the same time, listen, you're not supposed to open my door.
You can step out for me.
You're not supposed to open my door.
Well, let me tell you this. You're just escalating things because...
I'm not escalating anything. I can ask for a supervisor if I want to.
You can.
Because technically, y'all not supposed to search my car for no traffic infraction.
We're not searching. We're just doing a protective sweep.
What is a protective sweep? I'm not a gang member.
Okay. Did anybody here say that you're a gang member?
He just did.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, step out of the car so we can patch it in.
I don't mind stepping out of the car, but you know what?
All right. Well, if you want a supervisor here, I'll get one started this way.
Well, I wish you would.
I will.
Because, I mean, I'm going to apply under duress because I feel like y'all getting a little too aggressive with me.
Okay.
So I'm just going to let y'all know.
Put your hands on the back of your head for me.
Y'all just told him the car.
Oop. Hang on.
We're gonna set this down, okay?
Technically, y'all not supposed to pat me down nor go in my car.
Okay.
Whether y'all doing a search and
Kick your feet out.
If that's the case, then y'all, basically what y'all doing is y'all picking out who y'all want to, because there was 1,000 cars going up and down the street. Y'all pulled either one of them over. Y'all seen two young black men driving, and y'all chose to pull them over.
Shots fired right where you're coming from.
All right, go ahead and step back here.
Shots fired?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't us.
Hey, grab your smoke, man. Get the keys. There you go.
Where's my smoke?
Right here. Oh, watch out. Don't crush it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Harry, you want to be the second?
How does this standard get applied today? Normally, it's state Supreme Courts that are asked to define probable cause. Somebody's been arrested, and the court is asked to exclude that evidence because they say the police officers committed an unreasonable search and seizure. It was not based on probable cause. They didn't have enough reason. And so the court has to decide, well, what is probable cause, and did they have enough here? Along the way, they describe probable cause in terms very much like Brinegar. They often quote Brinegar and use the language we've already talked about as their starting point. So we get standard formulations like this. I'll read from a standard kind of mainstream definition, this one from South Dakota. The court says we need facts and circumstances such that a reasonably prudent person would conclude that an offense has been or is being committed. And if it's a search for property, you'd also say, and the property exists at the place designated. And you have to decide, and you have to make that determination, quote, to a probability. So you got to have some significant, substantial probability that a crime has been or is being committed, and therefore we can justify an arrest or a search for evidence of that crime. That's the kind of formulation that you often see. That's kind of the standard, the mainstream definition. There are some variations on that theme. So there are some states that emphasize that the person evaluating the claim is a magistrate, a judicial officer, somebody who sees a lot of these cases and can bring some expertise to the case and might see some significance in some small facts that others might not see. Other states will emphasize that the person making the presentation is an expert police officer, somebody who has learned over time the meaning of small cues in conduct, and therefore we can put some extra weight in the fact that the police officers found it to be suspicious. So we'll see that kind of discussion of police expertise in a number of these cases.
We're standing in front of Independence Hall in Philadelphia. This is where America was born. In 1776, the Continental Congress met here, and Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence. Congress approved it on July 4th, and that was the beginning of the American nation. Of course, that didn't take us all the way to where we are today. After the Declaration came the Revolutionary War, and after that, the Articles of Confederation, our first failed attempt at a national government. And in 1787, delegates from 12 states met again at Independence Hall to propose revisions to the Articles. What emerged, after months of secret deliberation, was the Constitution.
They got all the power and all the money and all the ability to cut deal. It ain't a tough job. They do it and they make it tough and they make it seem tough to manipulate the jury. So when a search warrant happens, you need to realize it's not a big end of the world. It's not the end all. It's not that we had all this powering evidence to get this search warrant. And the other problem you need to realize is when somebody seals a search warrant, they really don't want to get out. Now there's a reason to seal a search warrant. If I do a search warrant and it's an ongoing investigation, there's certain search warrant becomes public once I file the return. When I do a search warrant, I search, I seize evidence. When I seize that evidence, I turn that evidence into court, say this is what I got from this search warrant. And then that gives my credibility later that I've served 20 search warrants and all 20 search warrants have resulted in evidence. So that gives me a little bit more credibility when I go get another warrant. Well, what it also does is it makes this a government document. Government document is public, so now people can get access to that information. If I use confidential sources or confidential information that will compromise my ongoing investigation, I can have this warrant sealed. And once I have it sealed, here's the problem. There's no limit on how long. I just have it sealed. Now nobody can get that document. When a warrant is sealed, questions need to be popping in people's mind. Why is this warrant sealed? Are they really, because cops seal it all the time just for GP because they don't want to know it's a shitty warrant, because they don't want to get it out, for whatever reason they want. They just try, a lot of people, crooked cops, I know a lot of cops that will seal warrants for the main purpose just because they don't want somebody reading their shit. Because all their warrants are the same, they change the names, they're all the same, they're BS, and the next thing you know, people are going to jail who really aren't guilty, but the prosecution loves them because they get a conviction, they get somebody to go to jail. So, a search warrant, not a big deal, easy to get, there's flaws. It's better when cops get warrants because it shows, it gets other people involved. There's not just a cop making all the decisions independently and that he has to justify. He puts it on paper, he has it reviewed by the prosecution. Prosecution, since they're defending a warrant, I don't know if I covered this, they have to review it before it goes to the judge. A lot of judges will ask, what DA referred it? There's usually a spot on my warrants that says DA review and they have to sign it to show that it went to DA before I bring it to the judge. Because the DA may read something in there and go, oh man, you put that in there and if I go to court, man, that's going to bite me in the butt. Take that out. I don't like that. Because I put it in there because it's true, but they don't want it in there because they're like, it doesn't help the case. You can get the warrant without it. I don't want to give that up. If the defense gets this, I don't want them knowing that we know this. Again, there's that manipulation of the system that always goes on. So, I guess my point on the search warrant was whether this guy had a fake search warrant. They said they went and got all these people. To get a search warrant is fairly easy, but if you do something really intrusive, like if I go try to get a warrant to where I want to do a cavity search on somebody, I have to have pretty good evidence on why I think there's dope or gun or something up that guy's butt in order to get a hospital to force a cavity search and to start doing a probe in that guy's butt to find something. Normally what you would do is you would lock that person up in a padded cell where no place he can get rid of something, and you would give him on potty watch and he would shit in a bucket, and then after he shit you would take that out, search the shit, and then when you found what he shitted out you would know it was up his butt. If you kept him in there for 3 days and didn't come out, well, he was under constant video surveillance. We saw that he wasn't getting it and reading it. I mean, I was working Vallejo, I'd be chasing guys, they had crack cocaine in their pocket, running behind them with a cop. They'd pull that shit, they'd carry it in their ass, because a lot of cops will miss it. If they got a fat ass, it'll wrap around those little balls. And I'd see guys pull it out of their ass while they're running, shove it in their mouth and swallow it. And then people wonder why cops are cynical about how sick people are. Alright, hopefully that helps you understand a search warrant a little bit. Went a little long. If you understand the process of government, the key players, how it works, hopefully you'll understand how easy it is for you to get caught up in that system and get eaten up by that system that you think has checks and balances, is there to protect you, when it really isn't. I mean, I think we give out way too many guilty verdicts. I think we need to make prosecutors do much better jobs in court, and they should not be getting... The more that juries come back with not guilty, the more it forces prosecutors to come with better cases. So they stop this harassing citizens and going after every case they can and throwing shit against the wall and see what sticks. Because that's where prosecution are at. Government's so big now, we have so many attorneys, we have so much government, we have to justify all these jobs, we have to justify all these cops, we have to justify all these prosecutions. Well, now they're just taking cases they shouldn't. If jury people got together and started voting not guilty more, prosecutors would change their behavior and say, you know what, we're not going to prosecute. Defense attorneys would say, you know what, if you want to take this to trial, we can, but you're going to lose. Don't be trying to pull the shit on the jury in our eyes. That would keep the system. The system has to be kept in check by the people. Whether it's through the jury system voting not guilty on everything. If you want to send a message to a crooked DA, you have every jury in that jurisdiction start voting not guilty on every trial, no matter what it is, and you take away that prosecutor's ability to get convictions. Defense attorneys won't cut deals with them. Defense attorneys will want to go to court, and they'll know they're going to lose, so the prosecution will have to change what he does, and that's how you hold a district attorney, prosecutor, whatever they call them, city attorney. That's how you hold them accountable. You get the citizens together and you all start voting not guilty. That's how you put them in check. Government needs checks and balances. They need to be checked by the people. When you let government grow, you give them all the power, you submit, and you just go along with them, that's when they get oppressive, they get tyrannical, they get crazy, they start doing things they shouldn't be doing, because the people do not hold them in check. Our system is based on a voluntary compliance system. It only works when the citizens comply voluntarily. As soon as the citizens say no, and we stop voluntary compliance, the system stops. People don't realize the power they have. It's kind of like there's a picture to where the people are standing on one end of a board and the other end of the board is over a cliff, and it has one person that's labeled the government. If the people step off that board, the government fails and it falls. So the people have the power, if they exercise it, use it, and hold the government in check. When they don't care, they get busy, they're too worried about paying their taxes, too worried about keeping their health care, too worried about Democrat, Republican, this race, that sex, this gender, this sexual orientation. When they get all the people involved in all this other shit to divide us, that's when government grows and the people fail.
We're having this discussion in a historic room. Almost exactly 25 years ago, the first national conference on computer-assisted reporting was held on this campus, in this building, using every room in the building. And in those days, journalists had horror stories of trying to get access to data, if it was even in computer-readable form. A lot of it was paper records. FOIA requests were being denied or delayed on purpose. Records were being declared closed off when, even by statute, they were open. And I'm somewhat encouraged to see there's been a lot of progress, but I'm also very discouraged to see 25 years later, people in this room are still having the same kinds of problems that people were having in 1990, even with a public access counselor that did not exist in 1990. And it seems to me that there's one group in the state that continuously monitors bill drafts. That's the Hoosier State Press Association. Steve Key is general counsel. In a recent column, he said that he flagged more than 60 bills in the current legislative session that would have had a negative effect on open records or open meetings, or negatively affect transparency of government in some way. So the question is, and it's an open question, it seems to me the real danger in transparency is what legislators do naturally. And so how can we offset that? Now, one thing that happened quite by circumstance, my wife at one time happened to be a lawyer who was a bill drafter for the Legislative Services Agency. And she'd heard me rant on open records for a very long time. And when she was asked to draft a bill that mandated the collection of data, she would automatically add a clause to the bill draft that made the data available to the public. And when the legislator would look at the draft, well, what's this? And then she would explain it to them, and the legislator could either accept that clause or not. Usually they did. Well, she's retired. There's nobody doing that anymore as far as I know. So what does the panel think that can be done to further the progress of open records? I mean, we've got portals, we've got an access counselor, but records are still being denied. I mean, what's the answer?
In this screencast, we'll discuss the Fourth Amendment and its protection from unreasonable searches and seizures. First, though, let's look at the historical context of the Fourth Amendment. Under English law, the saying was, if the constable blunders, the crook should not go free. In other words, if the police made a mistake, it shouldn't result in the charges being dismissed. Now, this was a problem because it encouraged the introduction of evidence as trustworthy when it wasn't. Whenever a police officer violated someone's rights, they could just say, whoops, I made a mistake, and the charges wouldn't be dismissed. So the Fourth Amendment tries to prevent this. It protects us from unreasonable searches and seizures. It's important to note, all searches and seizures without a warrant are initially presumed to be unreasonable. Now, there are many types of searches without a warrant that the courts have recognized. Those will be discussed in Unit 7. So what is a search, and what is the purpose of a search? A search is considered a prying into hidden places. A search of a man's person, a house, or property. Searches are conducted in order to locate persons, contraband, not jail contraband, criminal contraband, fruits of a crime, and tools of a crime, such as a gun used in a bank robbery. The Founding Fathers recognized that sometimes searches and seizures would need to be conducted. They had to ensure only searches and seizures that were reasonable would be conducted, though. So in the Fourth Amendment, they created the requirement for a warrant and what it would have to contain. A warrant must first contain probable cause. Probable cause has been defined as facts and circumstances which would lead a reasonable person to believe a crime had been committed or a person had committed it. Warrants must identify what is to be seized, such as a person or an object, name or describe a person, place, or thing to be searched, and now this involves the who and the where. They must command a police officer to search. It's a magistrate's order. Therefore, it has to also be signed and dated by the magistrate.